Today we're going to address a problem that I run into quite frequently. Hip openers tend to be a very common type of pose in a general yoga class. One of the major problems with that is not that many people have flexible hips, and they take a yoga class in order to get there. However, they're thrown into these poses that are a bit advanced as far as hip opening goes, and I get a lot of complaints where they say, when I do pigeon pose it hurts my knee. But they continue to do it, thinking that everything's fine and dandy, and then usually later on down the line they'll have a bit of an issue, either with the hip, or the knee, or the back, or some other thing. So the first thing I wanted to say was, if you're doing a yoga pose and your knee hurts, stop. Should not be hurting your knee. One of the reasons why this happens, particularly in pigeon pose or other hip openers, is external rotation. So our body moves three-dimensionally, and our hip joint, as you can see here on Jacques, especially, is made to move three-dimensionally. So our hips do various different movements. This would be hip flexion, this would be hip extension, this would be abduction, this would be adduction. Those are all generally things that people know about. However, there's a whole category of movement called internal and external rotation. Jacques can't do it because he's bolted in, but I can do it, which is this, where the femur bone rotates in the hip socket without the pelvis moving. So when you do a pose like pigeon pose, for instance, where you're asked to be here, generally the problem is people think of their movement two-dimensionally, right? So let's even take this into a double pigeon. It's a little bit easier to demonstrate. So when I'm in double pigeon, which is this pose, the general feeling is my knee has to go down, right? Which in that relationship requires me to do a bit of abduction, right? The problem is, if I don't have that kind of movement in my hip joint and I just try to shove my knee down, what generally tends to happen is that the tibia could move and the femur maybe not move in the same relationship, and might result in a little bit of knee pain. It doesn't mean that you have to not do the pose, you just have to think about the movement differently. So what is happening in my hip joint when I'm doing that kind of thing is external rotation, meaning that my femur bone should be rotating this way. Now, if I rotate my femur bone this way and I get more rotation, that actually is what allows me to come forward with my knee landing where it's supposed to be, rather than me trying to shove my knee down and my leg is rotating this way. So when you're in this pose, as opposed to thinking about shoving your knee down, if you think about rotating from here and finding your way forward, not forcing it, that might be a way to save your knees. So, Kim from Smarter Bodies, email me if you have any questions.